Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today we're going way back, early Christianity, specifically 1 Corinthians 14.
One of Paul's letters.
Yeah, we've got his letter to the church in Corinth, plus some modern study guides to kind of break it all down, help us make sense of it all.
It's fascinating that these letters, they offer us a glimpse into what the early church was like, all its challenges, triumphs too.
Totally. And this letter, tackles something that people are still debating, discussing, even today: spiritual gifts.
Yeah, you're right. And chapter 14 zeroes in on how to use those gifts,
Yeah.
especially prophecy and speaking in tongues.
It's like Paul walks into this super vibrant, energetic community,
Yeah.
spiritually, I mean, and it seems like he has to address some practical issues, things popping up from all this enthusiasm.
Yeah, right from that first verse. Follow after charity and desire spiritual gifts, but rather that you may prophesy. Right off the bat, he's setting the stage. Love is the foundation, prophecy as the goal.
So he's like ranking the gifts then.
Not so much ranking, more like emphasizing their purpose. Remember, this Corinthian church was overflowing with gifts. Everyone had something they brought to the table. But it seems like maybe all this abundance led to some confusion, maybe even disorder.
Like a potluck where everyone brings their best dish, but no one thought about if the flavors would actually go together.
Exactly. Paul's not trying to shut down their enthusiasm, but he wants to kind of guide it towards a more unified expression, one that builds everyone up.
And he even compares speaking in tongues to, like, a useless instrument if no one understands it. He says, "So likewise ye, except ye utter by the tongue words easy to be understood, how shall it be known what is spoken? For ye shall speak into the air."
Wow. Yeah. Powerful imagery there. He's really emphasizing how important clarity is, understanding each other, especially when you're part of a community.
So he's saying if your gift isn't building others up, then what's the point?
Yeah, that's a key takeaway here. He's not saying speaking in tongues is bad. He even says he himself speaks in tongues more than anyone else.
But then he says, "Yet in the church I'd rather speak 5 words with my understanding, that by my voice I might teach others also, than 10,000 words in an unknown tongue."
Humility right there, putting the community's needs above his own.
Kind of radical for someone so connected to the spiritual realm, don't you think?
Absolutely. He's basically saying being understood is more important than spectacle. He wants these gifts to bring people together, not isolate them.
So where does prophecy fit in then? What exactly is it, and why does Paul keep emphasizing it?
Well, back then, prophecy wasn't really about, fortune telling. It was about conveying God's message in a way that the community could use, encouragement, guidance, even correction sometimes.
So speaking truth, wisdom, more than predicting the future.
Exactly. Building up the church,
Yeah.
helping people grow in their faith. That's what prophecy was about.
Makes sense. Especially when you think about how he emphasizes God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, later in the chapter.
Oh, that's crucial. That phrase gets to the heart of what Paul is saying. He wants them to get it. True spiritual expression should bring people together, not divide them, not create chaos.
But doesn't all this emphasis on order, understanding, doesn't that risk stifling, genuine spiritual expression? What about those spontaneous, overwhelming moments?
That's a great question. And, it's something lots of faith communities grapple with today, too. Even though Paul wants structure, order, he gets that spiritual freedom matters. It's about finding that balance, I guess.
Yeah.
Making sure that our expressions of faith are both real and they build others up.
So it's not about suppressing those individual experiences, it's about channeling them to benefit everyone.
Right. Like when he says how many people should speak in tongues, making sure there's someone to interpret, he's focused on communal understanding over individual display.
Sounds like a tricky balance. How can someone tell if what they're feeling, expressing is from the spirit or just their own emotions?
People have been wrestling with that question forever. Paul doesn't give us a formula, but he does give us some principles. He talks about weighing the fruits of the Spirit. Do our actions, our expressions lead to love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control?
So look beyond just the outward stuff. Examine the deeper impact.
Powerful, isn't it? He's saying, be mindful. Why are we doing what we're doing? Make sure those expressions of faith line up with who God is.
What struck me reading this was how specific Paul gets about how to practice these gifts in the community. It's like he's laying out an order of service.
Yeah, he's definitely giving guidelines, how to handle speaking in tongues, how many people at once, making sure there's interpretation.
Wow, just Try to picture those gatherings, people speaking in tongues, prophesying, sharing messages. The energy must have been
Oh,
intense.
definitely powerful. But, like Paul points out, without some structure or guidance, it could easily become chaotic, confusing.
That's where those instructions come in. It's like you're saying, we can have all this amazing spiritual energy, but let's channel it in a way that actually benefits everyone.
Yeah, it's fascinating how he can address these practical concerns while still affirming how much they genuinely wanted to express their faith. It's not about squashing their enthusiasm, more like guiding it, helping it mature.
Like walking a tightrope between order and freedom. Trying to find that sweet spot where the spirit can move without things getting disruptive or divisive.
Exactly. And that's still a challenge today for faith communities. How do you create spaces where people feel free to be themselves, express their faith authentically, but also keep those gatherings unified, uplifting?
It's a question worth thinking about, for sure. One we'll keep exploring as we go deeper into 1 Corinthians.
Absolutely. We need to approach it carefully, be sensitive to its complexities.
It seems like he's suggesting the women should get instruction from their husbands at home instead of participating in these gatherings.
That's one way to understand it. And it fits with the cultural norms back then. Women's roles were often limited to the home. But there are other ways to interpret it, too.
That's what makes this passage so interesting and challenging. Makes us confront our own assumptions, think about the historical context, and how our understanding of these texts can change over time.
Yeah. Engaging with Scripture isn't always about getting easy answers. Sometimes it's about wrestling with the tough questions, searching for understanding, recognizing that there are lots of different interpretations out there.
And I think it's really important to remember that this passage, some people use it to justify silencing women in all kinds of situations, inside and outside of the church. We have to look at it with a critical eye and think about how some interpretations can actually be harmful.
That's a really important point. We can't ignore the historical and cultural context, but we also can't ignore how these writings have been used to maintain harmful power structures. When we study these texts, we have to be humble, empathetic, and committed to seeking justice for everyone.
Well said. Something for us all to keep in mind as we continue this deep dive into 1 Corinthians 14.
It's amazing, though, isn't it, how even with these complex issues, controversial even, Paul never lets go of that love theme.
You're right. He keeps bringing it back, reminding them love should be driving everything, especially how they express those gifts.
Like right at the start, follow after charity and desire spiritual gifts, but rather that ye may prophesy.
Yeah. These gifts are amazing, he's saying, but don't forget what really matters.
And that love, that should shape how we see these gifts, use them. It's the motivation, the end goal.
It makes me think how sometimes we get so caught up in the doing of faith, the rituals, the rules, we forget the heart of it.
Easy to do, isn't it? Focus on the outward stuff, but miss that interchange real love brings.
And that's what Paul's warning against, right? He's calling them, us too, to go deeper, past the surface.
Prioritize love, not just putting on a show. Use your gifts to help others grow, not just your own ego.
So relevant, even now.
Hmm.
How many people use their platform in religion, anywhere really, to promote themselves, not to serve others?
Yeah, that temptation's always there.
Yeah.
Wanting recognition instead of really connecting, helping.
And that's where Paul's message cuts through. He's saying real spiritual power comes from loving, serving others.
And that love, it should be in everything we do, how we treat people, how we are in the community, even how we interact with the world.
Pretty radical thought, letting love drive everything.
Challenging for sure, but worth aiming for.
Absolutely. Faith isn't just what you believe, it's how you live. It's that love that changes us inside and makes us want to make things better.
And then Paul goes on about interpretation when someone's speaking in tongues, I mean. If any man speak in an unknown tongue, let it be by two, or at the most by three, and that by course, and let one interpret. Remember that.
He's not saying stop speaking in tongues, just be responsible with it.
Yeah, make sure it's understood, adds value to the gathering, to everyone there.
He even says if there's no one to interpret, the person should just stay silent. Pretty clear.
Shows how important it is for everyone to understand it's not about one person's experience.
And all ties back to what he was saying before, right? About how tongues can cause confusion, division, if no one gets it. He wants to channel that expression so it unifies, builds people up.
He uses that body analogy, too, how each part has its job, but they all got to work together for the body to be healthy.
Oh, that's a good one. We're all connected. What we do affects the whole community.
And how people outside the community see us, too. Paul gets that. He wants them to present a united front, a good witness to the world.
Especially in Corinth, right? Such a mixed up city. What they did spoke volumes about their faith.
Exactly. Paul wants their actions to show that love, that order, the hallmarks of a true Christian community. Their worship should be hope, not confusion or division.
Wow, it's amazing how he brings it all together. Spiritual gifts, order, clarity, even evangelism.
He's good at that, seeing the big picture, how all these pieces create a strong community that can then impact the world.
You can practically hear his passion, can't you? Urging us to really think about how we express our faith. Don't just make noise, make music. Don't just speak words, speak truth. And above all, do it with love.
Well said. It's a reminder our faith should be like a beautiful song, full of love and understanding, each person's part blending with the whole, creating something that builds everyone up.
And in that song, everyone's voice matters. But it needs that conductor, right? Those principles of love and order to make sure the music is both meaningful and inspiring.
Perfect analogy. Real spiritual expression isn't a solo. It's contributing to something bigger, a harmony of faith, something that speaks to believers and those searching for something more.
It's amazing to think these ancient texts are still relevant to us. What the Corinthians went through, their questions, searching for meaning, we still deal with that today.
The beauty of Scripture, right? Timeless, gives us insights and guidance that apply to every generation.
An ongoing conversation. Always something new to discover each time you read it.
And in this conversation, Paul's our guide, leading us through those tricky parts of faith, urging us to embrace both the extraordinary and the everyday, and to always, always put love first.
I love how he uses everyday examples, makes these old ideas feel so relatable.
Oh, for sure. Like comparing speaking in tongues without interpretation to an instrument no one can understand. Such a clear image. Helps us grasp how important clear communication is.
Or when he says, "Brethren, be not children in understanding. Howbeit in malice be ye children, but in understanding be men." Whoa. A call to grow up, right?
It is. Move past childish thinking and really grapple with what it means to have faith. Engage with your beliefs, challenge your assumptions, and try to live in a way that reflects that love and wisdom from Scripture.
And remember, we're all on this journey together, learning from each other, supporting each other, trying to make a world where faith brings us together, brings peace, not division and confusion.
It's like Paul is saying, let's make music together, not just noise. Use our gifts, our voices, our experiences to build something that lifts people up, inspires them, points towards a greater truth, a world with more love.
You know, one thing that really stuck with me is how Paul keeps saying love is the driving force behind every spiritual gift. Right from the start, follow after charity and desire spiritual gifts, but rather that you may prophesy. Like, yeah, these gifts are great, but don't forget the most important thing, love.
And that love, it should be at the core of how we use these gifts,
Yeah.
how we see them, why we use them, the goal we're aiming for.
He's saying without love, even the most amazing gifts, they don't mean anything.
Exactly. Paul wants us to go deeper, get to the heart of what it means to follow Christ.
He's challenging us to choose substance over spectacle, love over showing off, using what we have to build others up, not just ourselves.
It's about being real, being humble, understanding that true spiritual power comes from love and serving others.
And that love, it should be in everything we do, our relationships, how we are in the community, even how we treat the world around us.
It's a radical idea, huh? Love being the driving force.
It's tough, for sure, but it's what we should be aiming for.
And Paul lays it out beautifully in this letter.
Yeah. Faith isn't just what you believe, it's how you live. It's that love changing us deep down and pushing us to make things better.
It's about living a life that reflects Christ's grace, compassion, and selflessness.
And remembering we're not alone. We're united by a common purpose, walking this path together, a love that breaks down all the walls.
In that unity, we find strength, we find purpose, we find the courage to face life's challenges with hope and resilience.
Beautiful vision, isn't it? Love being the guiding principle, faith is a source of unity, of peace, and everyone empowered to use their gifts to create a world that's fairer, more compassionate.
It's a vision worth fighting for, a dream worth pursuing, a call to action that speaks to every believer.
And it reminds us, faith isn't static. It's alive. It grows and changes as we do, as we learn, as we engage with the world.
It's a journey of discovery, always exploring what it means to love, to serve, to let that power of faith transform our everyday lives.
And on that journey, we've got the wisdom of those who came before us. We've got the teachings of Scripture. And we've got that spirit within us pushing us to live lives that have meaning, purpose, and love.
It's a journey that challenges us, inspires us, and in the end leads us to a deeper understanding of ourselves, our faith, and our place in this grand creation.
And in that understanding, we find peace, we find purpose. We find the strength to face the future with courage, with hope, with an unwavering belief in the power of love to change everything.
It's remarkable, really, how Paul brings all these threads together: spiritual gifts, love, order, and even evangelism.
It really does show a deep understanding of how a healthy community works and the role faith plays in all that.
He seems to be saying faith isn't just personal, it's a responsibility to the community.
Yeah. It's like recognizing that what we do affects others in the church and out in the world.
Exactly. We need to be mindful. Think about how our actions, even what we say, might impact other people.
That makes me think, we all have this responsibility to use our voices well, to use any platform we have for good.
Yeah, it's a call to be intentional, to always think about the consequences of what we say and do.
What Paul says about clarity and understanding, that feels especially relevant now, don't you think? With all the misinformation, the division everywhere you look.
He's challenging us to really seek truth, have real conversations, try to understand each other, even when we disagree.
Communication is powerful, right? It can either connect people or push them apart.
And we have to use that power wisely, especially when we're talking about faith.
I'm also struck by how much Paul emphasizes unity, that we're all part of one body.
That analogy is so powerful. Like, we're all connected. What one person does has a ripple effect.
It's a challenge to think beyond ourselves, to think about what's best for the whole community.
We need each other. We're stronger together. That's what he's saying.
And that feeling of unity, of shared purpose, I think we all crave that, especially in a world that feels so fragmented.
Paul's offering a vision, isn't he? A community where love is the center, where differences are celebrated, and everyone has a part to play.
It's inspiring, but it's hard too. It's like he's calling us to step outside our comfort zones, to expand what it means to be a follower of Christ.
Yeah, it's about more than just believing. It's about becoming. Letting those beliefs change how we act, how we relate to each other, how we engage with the world.
And remembering, we're all on this journey together. We're all learning, growing. We need each other along the way.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into 1 Corinthians 14, what stands out for you? What will you take away from all this?
For me, it's that reminder that faith is active. It's not just sitting back and watching. It's about using what we have, our gifts, our voices, our actions, to make the community stronger, to make the world a better, more loving place.
Beautifully put. It's about putting faith into action, making a real difference in the world.
And even though Paul wrote this so long ago, it still speaks to us. It gives us guidance, wisdom, and challenges us to live a life that honors what we believe.
It's been great exploring this with you. I hope we can all be inspired to live out that love, that grace, that unity, everything Paul describes in 1 Corinthians 14.